What's up, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer, Tyler Horka, Jack Soble live on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel with this week's Notre Dame six-pack show where we take 6 Fighting Irish football topics, or maybe we'll put a basketball topic in there and take 6 minutes to break each item down. Please hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the Blue and Gold YouTube channel for more content. Just hit 30,000 subscribers, by the way. Woohoo! Thank you all for tuning into the content. I think we've been doing this channel. I think like the Clemson game 2020 was the big launching point for us. So really appreciate all those who've been tuning in, whether this is your first time watching or if you've been with us for coming up on 5 years now with this YouTube channel. Boys, I trust that you are well, so we're going to dive into this week's six-pack show. Jack, I'll let you start on this. I believe you wrote the story. The Athlon does every offseason like an anonymous quotes on Notre Dame where they talk to college coaches around the country. So, Jack, do you want to tell us some of the notable things that were said about the Fighting Irish in that article?
Yes, give me 1 second because I forgot we were doing this. This was the first topic, and I'm pulling that up.
I can start. I got it up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you start.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I got just minor thoughts on all of them, and you probably have the same, so you can kind of rip through it like I'm doing. So I thought the first interesting thing was, this is the full quote, but there's really one strong point that I want to make in it. But they might have had the same ending in a national title game, but football people understand the difference between the kind of roster Marcus Freeman has built versus the staff before. National titles are the standard here, but this is definitely a change program for the better. Overall, this is the most consistent we've seen the program in a long time. I agree with that completely. Jack, I think you do as well. I mean, the difference is as simple as, let's go back to 2012. What happened when Notre Dame got in a national title game? Got completely wiped off the field against Alabama. I mean, that thing was over early. And you can say that Notre Dame was getting blown out in this most recent national championship game too, but guess what? They had the resolve to fight back and make it a one-score game in the fourth quarter against Ohio State. Shout out Jaden Greathouse, Riley Leonard for that. But like, that was the reality. They were in a game in the fourth quarter. In a way, they weren't against Alabama. In a way, they weren't against Clemson and Alabama as well in the most recent national college football playoff semifinals. So I think that quote right there is really, really strong. And I really, really agree with it that like, this feels different. Notre Dame feels different. Feels like it can compete against the big dogs on that stage now.
I completely agree.
You want to go one by one, or do you?
Yeah. No, let's go back and forth here. I completely agree. And for what it's worth, that was 3 different quotes in the Athlon Sports segment. I kind of pieced them together by category. Like these are all generally about the same thing. But I completely agree. And I think the outcome of that game, it was important to support that point. The process was important as well. Before the game, the feeling in the Notre Dame locker room, like Manti Te'o has been on record about this. Like before Notre Dame faced Alabama in 2012, like they were looking over at like DJ Fluker in the Alabama tunnel and being like, you know, holy crap, we can't hang. We're not going to be able to hang with these guys. Te'o, I think, was quoted as saying like, we saw the look in, I saw the look in my teammates' eyes, and I knew we were toast. That wasn't the case for Notre Dame against Ohio State. Like that was a group of players who showed up believing they could win, even though they didn't. That distinction matters, and I think that's so important for differentiating the Kelly era run to the title game with the Freeman era run to the title game. The distinction is real. Completely agree with the quotes. The next one to touch on, with Steve Angeli gone, it seems like CJ Carr is the favorite to win the starting quarterback job. This is definitely a national sentiment, and I think you and I would both agree we think this is going to happen, but it's not set in stone yet.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to this. All I want to say is beware of Kenny Minchie. Like, we've cast this guy out before. Some stronger than others. Like some people thought he was going to be the one to transfer. Let's be honest here. People thought Steve Angeli would still be here. So you wrote the awesome column a couple months ago or a month ago, whenever that was, when Steve Angeli ended up leaving, I guess a month and a half ago. Like, Kenny Minchie has done enough to earn his good graces and earn our respect, honestly, not just the media, but the fans too. So beware of him. Also, one more thing on the bunch of quotes that we just talked about in terms of Notre Dame being like on a national prominence level at this point. We got to remember that beating Indiana, sort of, but beating Georgia, beating Penn State,
Yes.
that was different too. Like we don't just have to talk about the national championship and the way they played in that game. Notre Dame's not winning those types of games under Brian Kelly. I mean, we know the stat, right? They hadn't won a game of that magnitude in like 30 years. So it's important to note that too.
Absolutely. Next quote we can run through very quickly. If Jeremiah Love doesn't have a Heisman season, it might be because there's so much quality at the position. They've got a lot of that talent in the backfield. We've talked about this at length over the offseason. I don't even know if we need to go back and forth on that. It's pretty clear that Love is a Heisman caliber player who will probably not win the Heisman Trophy because he does not, nor does he want nor does he want to have the quantity of carries necessary. The last couple that I kind of categorized together. Changes on the Notre Dame defense. It's a safe bet. You're going to see more mixed coverages with Chris Ash at DC. They were dead to rights against Ohio State out on the outside playing man, and that defense is really talented, even losing some key leaders. Yes, Ash is going to mix coverages, but I would be remiss if we didn't point out like they were dead to rights playing zone in that game too. Like people recognize the last play where Christian Gray got beat. And Notre Dame ran an all-out blitz that Ohio State called a 7-man protection on and picked up. They got outguessed. Like they could have played zone and gotten beat there too. That happened all throughout the first half. So I think people are oversimplifying what happened in the Natty as it relates to this. But yes, they're going to mix up some coverages a little bit more under Chris Ash.
Yeah, it's not all Natty based, kind of like what we were talking about with those first group of quotes. Is like we have to recognize some other things there. We have to recognize that Chris Ash is not Al Golden, and Chris Ash is going to mix in some zone because that's what Chris Ash wants to do, and this is his defense now. So as fun as it was to say Notre Dame man all season last year, this is going to be a little bit of a new defense.
Yes.
All right, so major college football playoff update, and we'll start with Jack on this one. So last year, I feel like I wanted, like after you have Boise State and Arizona State in the 3 and 4, and they lose in the first round, and it's like, I remember thinking I want auto bids, but not auto buys for conference champs. Well, now that's what it is, right? And now I don't know if I love it. Jack, what do you think? Tell us what am I missing here? You know, what are your thoughts about all this and how it and then we'll get to note and how it relates to Notre Dame, but from a specific college football, generally speaking, just let's talk about this.
I'm honestly not sure what would have changed your opinion here, Mike, since it happened in December and January. I think this was an obvious change. I think there was some kind of financial concession made to everyone who isn't the Big Ten and the SEC, because the Big Ten and the SEC is obviously who's benefiting and Notre Dame, but we'll get to that later. But I think the auto buys for conference champions for all 4 of the top 4 conference champions made sense when Texas was in the Big 12 and Oklahoma was in the Big 12 and Oregon, USC were in the Pac-12 when the Pac-12 existed. We'd be remiss if we didn't say that one of those auto buy teams, almost won their first round or their quarterfinal game, and probably should have won if they didn't blow a coverage on a 4th and long. So, like, yes, these teams can compete, but it also led to some unfair matchup, not necessarily unfair matchups, but like teams like Oregon and Penn and Georgia, excuse me, lost my train of thought. Teams like Oregon and Georgia were essentially punished with more difficult second round matchups for winning their conference championship games with Ohio State and Notre Dame, as opposed to Texas and Penn State, who lost their conference championship games and wound up with Boise State and Arizona State. So this change fixes that problem, and I think it's an obvious move.
Yeah, I think that's where I start, because I'm just looking at what the bracket would have looked like last year had it been under this new straight seeding system. And like you said, Jack, Oregon, instead of facing Ohio State, who eventually goes on to win the national championship, you're facing the winner of Indiana versus Boise State. I think I like Oregon to beat both of those teams. And the same thing with Georgia, quite frankly. They get Notre Dame last year. And Notre Dame obviously was on a 13-game winning streak or whatever it was at that time, 12-game winning streak going into that game. Instead of that, you're playing Tennessee, good team, talented team, flawed team, as we found out again in that game against Ohio State, or SMU, who got ran off the field against Penn State in the first round. So that's the one side of it. And then everyone was also saying, man, every single team that got a bye lost. Like, is that because they had the bye and they had this extra time? No, like, you want the bye. That's what this is all about. In any playoff system, you want the bye. And guess why all 4 of them lost is because two of the teams that would have gotten byes in the new format last year beat the teams that actually had byes last year. Like, Penn State would have had a bye. Penn State beat Boise State. I don't think anybody was shocked about that. Texas would have had a bye. Instead, Arizona State had a bye. Texas beat Arizona State. And I know you kind of said it, Jack. Maybe they should have lost that game, but guess what? They won that game. Yeah. So, like, it's I'm not surprised by any of that. I think you're rewarding teams that should have gotten byes the way I'm looking at it right now.
Jack, let me jump in here real quick to ask you this. What about the argument that conference championship games don't really mean anything anymore, or they definitely don't mean as much? And Joe Bro said no auto bids. I'm looking at the NCAA website. It says there are 5 automatic qualifiers. The 5 conference champs ranked.
Yeah, we should make that clear. There are still auto bids, but I mean, Mike, like, the conference championship games still mean something to, like, the ACC and the Big 12 and the group of 5. Like, you still have to win your conference championship to get a bid. And truthfully, like we said earlier, there was almost a disadvantage to winning your conference championship based on last year's system. And we should also point out that the new system will not control for inexplicable regular season losses like Ohio State to Michigan, Notre Dame to Northern Illinois. Even I was texting you a little bit about this earlier this week, Tyler. Like, Texas, I thought, was a better team than Georgia. Texas just had a tough time with Georgia twice, and Georgia got the higher seed, even though they weren't necessarily the better team. So, like, this system won't control for that. There will still wind up being blowouts in the CFP and some, seeding advantages or disadvantages that we can't necessarily control for. This system will give us a better chance of rewarding teams for winning games and rewarding teams for winning their conference championships for the teams that don't get byes, giving them a more fair first round matchup. For the teams that do get byes, giving them a more fair second round matchup. It is a common sense move that I'm glad happened, even though this system's probably only going to last for a year until the Big Ten and the SEC blow it up themselves.
Yeah, that was going to be my last point. We just spent 5 minutes talking about this, as we should. I'm a right here, right now type of guy, and this is what we're looking at in 2025. Like, this is the path that all these teams have to take to try to win 2025, 2026 national championship. But Jack, like you said, this is only going to last for, like, this year, right? We're going to go to 16 teams in 2026, as that's what it's looking at. So it's fun to look at what would have been last year, because I keep looking at this bracket and I'm mesmerized by it because it looks entirely different than it did. Like, Notre Dame's the 5 seed in this, and we're going to talk about what Notre Dame looks like in the straight seeding model in the next segment. But last year, they're the 7 playing the 10. So you're still hosting, but Notre Dame's playing Clemson. And what was the narrative around Clemson last year was, like, these guys snuck in. They won the really crappy ACC. Like, I think people would have been really excited. The Indiana game was really exciting because you had that intrastate type of feel to it. But I think people would have been licking their chops and saying, all right, come on, Clemson. Like, we're going to get you guys here in South Bend.
So the biggest talking point around this change for Notre Dame is they can now get a bye. Jack Swarbrick's got to be smiling, Tyler.
Yeah, and look, he was smiling in the old system too, because it was never – again, I said 5 minutes ago that in any playoff system, I don't care what sport, you want the bye, right? Like, you want to be able to say, we played these 12 games, and what we did in those 12 games earned us the right to not have to play 4 in the playoff. We only have to play 3. Now, Notre Dame, it's pretty interesting because Jack Swarbrick was smiling in the old system because, Jack, I think you and I both agree that the conference championship week, and Jack Swarbrick agrees too, that was Notre Dame's bye. They sat at home watching teams beat each other up for whatever reason. Mike, you were just in here talking about, like, conference championship games. Did they matter then? Do they matter more now? Like, some people think they don't matter at all, no matter what. Notre Dame was sitting back at home saying, we don't have to play. You might get that. Plus, not having to play in late December, like when it was cold as you know what in South Bend. That was fun. That was awesome. Like it was a good time. But if this was the case and Notre Dame went 12-0 in that season last year, you'd be at home like watching these other teams fight for their lives in the first round of the playoffs. So I think it's a win. Like if you ask Marcus Freeman, hey, how about this, Jack? Ask Riley Mills and Jeremiah Love if they would have liked to have a first round bye in last year's playoff, as opposed to tearing the ACL in one of those cases and dinging up a knee even worse than it already was in Jeremiah Love's case. So yeah, you take the bye if you can get it, especially because you're Notre Dame and you're already in a unique situation anyway, where you might only have to play 15 games and win a national championship. Other teams are playing 16 or 17.
I have not been around nearly enough to comment on Jack Swarbrick's legacy at Notre Dame, but he did get two extremely important things right towards the end of his tenure. Number one was hiring Marcus Freeman. Number two was helping design a college football playoff system that was favorable to Notre Dame then, but was headed down a path where it's very favorable to Notre Dame now, to the point where it might be more favorable to Notre Dame than anyone else in college football. Because like you referenced, Tyler, Notre Dame cannot play during conference championship week. If they get a top 4 seed, now they're going to get a bye. So Notre Dame could have to play 15 games to win a national championship, when everyone else, because I'm assuming there isn't really a path for a team to not finish in the top 2 of the Big Ten or the SEC and still get a bye. That seems unlikely to me. So assuming that doesn't happen, a team misses their conference championship but still finishes in the top 4, no one else can play fewer than 16 games and win a national championship. That is an incredible advantage to have because like you said, Tyler, you can scream all you want about teams who got byes, not winning their first round games, although a less talented Arizona State team still took Texas to the brink after getting a first round bye. You want as little opportunity to suffer injuries as possible. The number one thing that late in the season is staying healthy. I don't care about rust. You can shake off rust any way you can. I think that's an overrated concept when you get that late in the season. The more rest you can have, the better, because your body's beat up. No one is 100% at that time of year. That's what we hear. That's what we heard so many times from Notre Dame players. You want as few opportunities to get injured as possible, and if you get that bye, you have that.
I mean, I think we're both big time sports lovers beyond what we do for work, right? Covering college sports. If you're watching the NHL or NBA playoffs right now, would you rather a team you're rooting for sweep or go to 7 games? Yeah, game 7 is fun, but you're rooting for your team to win every single game. Why? Get through it faster, move on, know what you have ahead of you. That's what this is in college football. It's a completely different thing than a 7-game series, but if you only have to play 3 playoff games to win a national championship, you take that over having to play 4. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Now, I think Notre Dame's in a good spot either way because, like I said a little bit earlier, that home playoff game was fun and it was advantageous, and it was pretty much over early in the fourth quarter, or maybe even earlier than that, where you said, yep, Notre Dame's going to beat Indiana, and this was a nice little tune-up. You got some good momentum and confidence heading into the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, which we saw play out there as well. I thought Notre Dame was a very confident team there. Not necessary, but if that is what happens, then Notre Dame will take that too. So you're probably playing a home playoff game, or you're getting a bye where you're at with Notre Dame right now, because I think this is like with the schedule as well. You're looking at probably 11-1 football team again this year, maybe at the worst. 12-0 is very hard. I always say that. Like, I don't care if you're Notre Dame playing an independent schedule, if you're in the Big Ten or the SEC or whatever, it's very hard to go 12-0. But guess what? If you do go 12-0, Jack, I think Notre Dame's in for, I guess, like we said, the system's going to be changing. But under this model, if you're 12-0 Notre Dame, you're getting the bye every single time. Like, there's no way that you're going to be number 5 without having lost a game. And that's a really good spot to be in. I really like this for Notre Dame, even if it is only for the 2025 season.
I will use the last 20 seconds of our time to fully endorse the idea of keeping auto buys for the Big 12, ACC, and highest Group of 5 champion for as long as college football remains a thing, because that even though auto buys wound up giving you an unfair field, everyone should have the opportunity to have access to the college football playoff even as a lower seed. So auto bids should 100% remain a thing.
Yep, agree there. And Tyler, we actually did a video with him and Darren Pritchett today where Tyler talked about the potential of a 16-team playoff and how that would affect Notre Dame. So check that out on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel. Jack wrote a story about, I'll just read the headline, SP plus projections. What do ESPN analytics say about Notre Dame? So answer that question, Jack.
Yes. So SP plus one of ESPN's two numbers based and ranking systems. The other one FPI, if I recall correctly. SP plus is based on a few factors, including returning production, recent recruiting, and recent history. They also adjusted a little bit this spring for coaching changes, which is why Notre Dame dropped a spot. Texas actually jumped both Notre Dame and Oregon. So it's 1 Ohio State, 2 Alabama, 3 Penn State, 4 Georgia, 5 Texas, 6 Notre Dame. Rounding out the top 10, 7 Oregon, 8 Clemson, 9 LSU, 10 Michigan, which I know will infuriate a lot of people in the comments, but their defense was rated number 3 in the country, even though their offense is down at 32. The projected win total, though, that ESPN had, despite being ranked as the 6th best team, is number 1 in the country at 10.5 because Notre Dame's schedule is rated at number 44 in the country. So projected win total, it's 1 Notre Dame, 2 Penn State, 3 Ohio State, 4 Oregon, 5 Clemson. Those are the only 5 teams with a win total at 10 or more. So my main takeaway from this is that Notre Dame should win 10 or 11 games this season. There's not much of an excuse not to at this point.
Yeah, I'm not a huge numbers guy or math nerd or anything. That's why I'm a writer and not an engineer like my brother or some of my other friends. But I mean, the numbers are jumping out right in front of you here, Jack. And like, I think Notre Dame is this is a good slot for Notre Dame if that's the way that you want to look at it. Like, they are a top 10 for sure, maybe even top 5 type of team. And I think with the parity that we've seen in college football over the last couple of seasons, where it's not just, Georgia's going to win, this is a formality. How much is Georgia going to win by? Before that, it was Alabama, and, Clemson snuck in a few. LSU got their one, whatever. I think that this is a good spot for Notre Dame to be. And I look at so you have the little chart. Definitely go to blueandgold.com. You can check out Jack's article here where he just kind of breaks down the top 10. And you're looking at the SP Plus offense ranks and the defense ranks. And I think there's actually only 5 teams in the top 10 that are both top 10 in offense and defense. And like you said, Texas is ahead of Notre Dame right now, and they're not even one of those teams. So you have the top 4, Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State, Georgia. They're all top 10 in offense and defense. Texas is outside of the top 10 in offense at 17, but Notre Dame is 10 in offense and 8 in defense. So like, I think that's what stood out the most to me about the first part of your article there is like, we've seen it in the Marcus Freeman era, especially last year. Obviously, last year is the best season that Marcus Freeman has had. It was the balance of the football team that led the Irish to Atlanta and the chance to play for the national championship. Like, early on, we thought that the offense might be a huge hindrance, but Riley Leonard figured it out a little bit. He remained incredibly potent on the ground. And then you add in what Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and all those guys did there. And then Xavier Watson, everyone else on the defensive side. Like, I think that's what we're seeing with Notre Dame is the balance. And it kind of goes back to the very first section of this show where we talked about the anonymous quotes is like, this feels different. And I think that chart kind of portrays that, where you have a Notre Dame team that is great at offense, bringing a lot back there, great at defense, bringing enough back there. And you have a bona fide top 10, maybe a top 5 football team.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out is the strength of schedule metrics. Again, Notre Dame ranked 44th. This was calculated based on one question. You can go to ESPN's website for more details here. Strength of schedule calculated based on one question. How would the average top 5 team fare against your schedule? He wrote that he used Notre Dame as a specific example. ESPN's Bill Connolly did. Notre Dame, a top 5 team, the average top 5 team would have 10.7 wins approximately against Notre Dame's schedule. But against the most difficult schedule in the country, which was Oklahoma, it would just have 9.1. So like that brings me back to my original point is like, there's really no excuse for Notre Dame not being a college football playoff team right now. Like if they are at that level, if they are at the top 5 level, they're going to win 11 games this season. And even if you drop that first one against Miami, and we'll talk about the opponents moving forward, like Miami is their toughest game. They should, and I know winning out is really hard, but they should win every game after Miami. It is my opinion. I think the numbers back it up.
The issue there for me is like, I don't know if 10 and is it the same thing, Jack, where like I don't know if 10-2 gets Notre Dame in the playoff next year because of the schedule.
There's a better chance. Like it depends on how good their opponents wind up being, and like how good how many 2-loss SEC teams are there. Because like 10-2 would have had a much better chance of making it in a 12-team system last year than it would have in 2023 when there were a lot more 2-loss SEC teams to deal with. So it could, depending on what the losses are, because obviously last year Notre Dame cannot possibly have a worse loss than they had last year. So they would I don't know if they would, but they would have a better chance.
All right, moving along here as the bell goes off. Notre Dame opponent research. You guys have been writing Notre Dame football opponent transfer portal overviews, looking at each team. And I know that Tyler wrote the Pitt preview, so only Syracuse and Stanford remain in that series. But as you guys have continued doing this research about other teams and specifically on the portal, what are you learning about some of the Irish opponents this year? We'll start with Tyler.
Yeah, for me, it's a lot more than just the portal research that we're doing. I think Jack has dug into it a little bit more because he's doing the magazine previews for some of these teams. But Jack, in reading what you've done and doing my own research and kind of continuing the conversation that we just had from the last segment there, for me, this season for Notre Dame is coming down to if they get through those first 2 games, like I am a firm believer in going 12-0 is very, very hard. Said it earlier today. So there's always room for a slip up. Last year, the slip up was Northern Illinois. Did not see that coming, but that's what it was. And you go 11-1 as a result. For me, it's beat Miami, beat Texas A&M, which is very doable, I think, reading your reports on those teams. Maybe this is a 12-0 football team because in the research that I've done, and maybe you agree in the research that you've done, I think Notre Dame is far and away a better football team than pretty much everyone on the schedule. Going to Miami makes it a little dicey. You've said it before, if Carson Beck turns back the clock to 2023, and I don't think he was like some Superman in that season even, but he was good enough. That makes it a little more difficult. But win that game, hold serve at home against Texas A&M. I like Notre Dame in every game this season, and that's coming from a guy that thinks it's dang near impossible to go 12-0 because it just doesn't happen. So I like Notre Dame against this schedule and getting to know these opponents a little bit more. I really like Notre Dame in pretty much all of these games.
Yeah, the best way to put it is that I think the average opponent on Notre Dame's schedule is much better than it was last year, but that I don't think anyone besides Miami, possibly Texas A&M, will see about USC because you really never know with them. USC is what they usually are. Like the secondary should be pretty good. Quarterback has really high ceiling. Wide receivers but the wide receivers are 2 of the best 3 probably wide receivers that Notre Dame's going to face. But the question is always O-line, D-line. Notre Dame should win both sides of the trenches against them. So like besides those 3, if Notre Dame is on their A game every week, a Notre Dame team on its A game will not lose to Arkansas. No, even though Pitt, I think I was reading your report earlier today, Tyler. Pitt intrigues me more than I think they intrigue you. But a Notre Dame team on its A game will not lose to Pitt. A Notre Dame team on its A game will not lose to Boise State, even though like a Notre Dame team on its B game might have a little bit of trouble because Boise State should be strong in both trenches. Yes, they lost Ashton Genty, but they brought back a lot of that O-line and D-line and their quarterback. And like, here's a fun fact about Boise State. Jaden Mickey's a plain talented quarterback. He's probably not going to start, at least not right away, because Boise State brought back both their senior starting corners. They're a really good team from top to bottom, but they don't have the top end talent to beat Notre Dame if Notre Dame's at its best. Then you have Navy, who's intriguing. The Navy game's going to be fun as hell. Notre Dame's going to win that game like 49-24 because Navy brought all its skill players back. But if Notre Dame offense wakes up, they're not going to be able to stop them. So that's kind of the lesson here. You move past week 1, you move past week 2. There isn't really a team that can beat Notre Dame if Notre Dame truly shows up.
Yeah, you might get more 10 to 14 point wins than you got like 17 to 28 point wins or whatever it was last year is what I'm thinking. And that doesn't all have to do with Notre Dame's opponents either. Like, I think we need to introduce into this conversation, like, we still don't know exactly what Notre Dame's going to get from a CJ Carr or a Kenny Minchie. Like that dictates a lot of what's going to happen against some of these teams, like you said, Jack, where things maybe could get dicey if Notre Dame's not on its A game. And I think someone in the comments, Jay Carr, said, like, if Arkansas is 11 a.m., weird things happen type of game. Like, weird things happen type of games pop up when your quarterback play isn't 100% sound certain. You know what you're going to get from that guy. Like, as much as people wanted to rag on Riley Leonard, you knew what you were going to get from him. And pretty much every single time that was enough for Notre Dame to not only win games, but start pulling away in games, because he stopped throwing interceptions too. I think that was huge. It was like a really long stretch without Riley Leonard throwing an interception last year. And that was massive. And Notre Dame just being able to like widen the gap against some of these teams. You get Minchie or Carr to throw a late interception against Arkansas, or like early third quarter interception type of thing. All of a sudden you're like, oh no, this is a game where I thought Notre Dame was way better than this team, but now they're on the road and now this team has belief. That's going to get interesting. But by and large, I still agree with my main premise that I like Notre Dame against this schedule, man. I really think I'll probably end up picking 11-1 because I just very much believe in the slip-up game. And again, it happened against NIU last year. It's probably going to happen against somebody else, but 11-1 still gets you in the playoff. Like, this is a playoff team.
I'll probably wind up picking 11-1 as well. A&M is weird to me because they can be, if the quarterback Marcel Reed is for real, they can be really good offensively. I'm just still a little concerned about their secondary.
Isn't Marcus Freeman 1-2 in home openers as well, and the only win is against an FCS team? Like, we got to take that into account.
This is true. True.
Tennessee State. I believe we talked about Pat Garrity and the hire for him being the general manager of the women's and men's basketball programs at Notre Dame, but wanted to discuss him a little bit more for this week's show, Jack, considering that you guys got to talk to him in a press conference. So what'd you think about, that introduction?
Yeah, I like Pat Garrity a lot. I think he's a well-spoken dude who clearly knows Notre Dame basketball, what it is, what it isn't on both sides of the men's and women's coin, and what it takes to win there, and certainly to be successful as a player there, because he was a very successful Notre Dame men's basketball player. He was a pretty dang successful NBA player as well. So like he knows what it takes. I think that experience is probably going to be helpful just as like a voice on the recruiting trail. He's not going to be on the road recruiting, but when guys visit, assuming Pat Garrity will talk to them. But from everything I hear and continue to hear, like, his biggest contributions are going to be on the NIL side, balancing the budget, fundraising, making determining how much to allocate NIL and to where. And I think that is what Notre Dame needs. I don't think we can really tell, how good he's going to be at his job based on that, or really most introductory press conferences with some exceptions on either extreme. But, I certainly enjoyed talking to him, and I'm interested to see how it's going to work out in Notre Dame.
Yeah, a couple quick notes on the Garrity thing. It always helps to have a smart guy in the room, right? Like, eyes, ears, like you said, Jack, you said a couple of times there, knows what it takes, averaged over 23, close to 24 points in a single season at Notre Dame. Like, kids look at that and they're like, oh, he did it. He did it here. I want to do that. And what else do they want to do? They want to make it to the pros and they want to stay in the pros. He did that for 10 years. So that helps having it around. And I think talking to Micah Shrewsbury and Niele Ivey immediately after Garrity talked, and hearing them kind of echo those same sentiments, like, yeah, this guy did it here. He's a Notre Dame legend. he can be a good resource for our players. Basically, he can be a good resource for us in the perspective in the shoes of the coaches. I think that was interesting hearing that. Was also interesting hearing him say, and I think this was in response to one of my questions at the press conference. He's like, yeah, my personal accolades were all fine and dandy, but Notre Dame men's basketball did not win a whole lot while I was here. And I think the record was just over 500 in his 4 years. And he was a Big East Player of the Year in one of those. So he knows what it takes. He also knows what it doesn't take and what it looks like when a team is floundering a little bit and a program isn't in the right spot and isn't getting to NCAA tournaments like the position of Notre Dame men's basketball right now. So I think he's going to say, hey, this kind of feels like it was when I was here. Maybe we try some other things. And I get it. It's been 30 years since then. But again, it does circle back to him being smart, having been in big time rooms. I mean, what he did with the Pistons, I think, is invaluable. And that goes back to what you were saying, Jack, about like balancing some numbers things, some money things. He knows what that looks like. Obviously, what he did on the court speaks for itself. And I think that's going to speak volumes to maybe some recruiting conversations. Like you can have this guy in the room when big time recruit comes for a football weekend and just have a little conversation with the recruit that you're really trying to get. Maybe you get that recruit this time around and you wouldn't have got him if Pat Garrity wasn't there. So just on so many different levels, I think it helps to have Pat Garrity in the room. And like, this is just the nature of college athletics right now as well. It's less amateur than ever before. And you need general manager types kind of overseeing some things.
Another note I thought was interesting. You mentioned talking to Shrewsbury and Ivy that while they were very involved in the process of Pete Bavacqua deciding that a GM was necessary, like kind of talking about what the coaches needed, and I think that they seem happy with the hire. They made it pretty clear that they were not involved in the hiring process of Pat Garrity specifically. I would consider this to be, I know Pat Garrity isn't a head coach, but this is Pete Bavacqua's first major sports hire. Because determining Pat Garrity was the right guy for this. This was a Pete Bavacqua decision. So that is interesting. We should also mention on the hoops front, women's hoops recruiting news. Tyler, you can tell us about Bella Ragone. And before you do that, I would mention that it is possible within the next month or so that we will see some movement on the men's basketball front of the class of 26.
Yeah, Bella Ragone, first commit for Notre Dame in the class of 2026. And I just want to make the point that you hope it's the first of many. Like you want to see 3 to 5 commits in this class for Notre Dame. And to get a top 25 player, that's exactly what she is. I think she's right on the 25 mark there. She was a player of the year in Georgia as a junior, obviously still has her senior year to go down there. Perfect wing type of player, like maybe not as athletic and savvy as a Sonia Citrone, but someone that gives you 6'2" length out there, really good on both sides in terms of shooting, and then can play a little defense as well. So building block type of, and more than that, really. She's really talented, but this is a recruit that you can build off of in the 2026 class.
Good stuff, boys, and appreciate you bringing up the new commitments for Neil Ivy in the women's basketball program. Awesome stuff. Folks, if you have not done so yet, please hit the thumbs up on this video for more content. Last week, we had to cancel the show with Tim Hyde. His family was sick, so Tim had to play doctor and make sure everyone was good. So we'll be back with Tim, at least I hope. He hasn't said otherwise. 8 p.m. Eastern time. Recruiting show Friday. Check out blueandgold.com for more. You can check out bluegoldonline.com for our annual football preview magazine. What is it? 160 plus pages, full glossy pages. So it's, not like a newspaper. It's like really quality, good material on the paper. Fantastic articles. It'll be a Bible for you throughout the summer and into the fall. And this YouTube channel has more recruiting updates. I posted 2 videos earlier today, one with Tyler and Darren, one with me and Darren, and then we'll have more of those to spread out throughout the week along with our live show. So again, folks, hit the thumbs up if you have not done so yet. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel, bluegoldonline.com, blueandgold.com, and this YouTube channel. We got you covered. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and as always, we'll catch you next time.